Oh, don't you know that it's all about that dart, about that dart, about that dart. No fooling, it's all about that dart. Okay, you're like, what are you doing? And honestly, one of my students made this up, Chris. If you're watching this, I still sing that song to myself all the time. If you're new around here, or if you've been around for a while, you have probably heard me say, it's all about the dart. All about the dart. Once you understand the dart, the floodgates open and the understanding of pattern making comes upon you, and you can suddenly make anything fit and of any shape and size. If you're still like, what are you talking about, Trish? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why are you so fascinated with this little triangle on a pattern? Let me just give you a little bit of insight today for Tricky Thursday, because you will begin to understand. You will begin to understand why it is that I love the dart so much and really think it's where everything begins. For this week's Tricky Thursday, we're going to talk about the dart. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Trisha, your pattern nerd friend. I am the owner of Creative Costume Academy, and this is my little corner of the internet where I like to nerd out about pattern making, fitting, sewing, and all the things, and share my knowledge with you. I have 20 plus years in the entertainment industry making costumes for big theatrical productions. That's where a lot of my skills come from, and just honestly, having a passion to learn about pattern making. In the last few years, that passion has really turned into, I want you to understand and learn the power of pattern making and learn that it's attainable for you as well. Because I'm so tired of people thinking that it's not for them, or it's too hard, or they can't do it. Pshaw to all of that. Let's have fun. Let's learn about pattern making so that you can really utilize this super powerful skill. Now, if you're loving this kind of jive, we put out at least one video a week usually. So please hit that subscribe button, because every subscriber helps. And if you turn on those notifications, you'll get to know whenever we drop a video. If you love what you're learning here, please share it with your friends so that we can help more people empower themselves with pattern making. I truly believe what we're talking about today is like, I want to make t-shirts. We've talked about it. I've had students create designs for me. This is one of my catchphrases. I have many, but it's all about the dart. And honestly, what I think about pattern making is to understand pattern making, to understand fitting. These are subjects that can go deep. We could go into all kinds of crazy directions with all of these, but I really like to distill it down and just make it as simple as possible. Then you can take that as far as you want to take it, but to just really start to understand it, let's make it as simple as possible, like get down to the basics. While that could sound really boring, are honestly super powerful. Everything that you make with patterns really comes down to the dart. And that's why I say that. That's why I say it's all about the dart, because it is. It is all about the dart. And I'm not talking about just dart manipulation. If you've heard about that before, I've heard friends of mine go, ugh, dart manipulation is so boring. And I'm like, oh my God, it's everything. You know, I am getting excited because this is my favorite thing. I want t-shirts, all the things. Let's talk about why that is. First of all, if you're new to sewing, if you're new to pattern making, you might not even know what a dart is, but I bet you do, you know? Since I'm your pattern nerd friend, you may have noticed I have decorated my walls with patterns. What could I say? I do love patterns. I love just the way they look. These are vintage patterns, but let me just point out what a dart looks like. See this here? This little triangle shape. So this is actually a bodice, and this is a dart to pull in the shape. We've got a couple more darts over here. This is a front bodice. So you have a front dart at the side bust. You have a dart at the waist. Over on that pattern over there, we've got the same. This is the neckline. And this is our waist dart, and we have our darts over here. We have another dart over here in this pattern. Most patterns that are fit to the body, but you may have noticed, check out my shirt. I don't have any darts in my shirt, but notice how it just kind of hangs. It's not fitted, it's not shaped to the form of my body. I do have a fancy little bow. But if I wanted to make this more shaped to my body, then I could put darts in and now it can hug my body. So that's what darts do. We're gonna go into this a little bit more. I wanna show you on the table what that means. In case you're new to sewing, in case you're new to what a dart is, this little triangle is what a dart is considered. But the cool thing about darts and what you can really do with them is it's more than just a triangle that you put in to shape something to your body, but you can also see this is a sleeve pattern, and I know this decoration is in the way, but this sleeve pattern has little pleats here for the cuff, and then we have a little tiny dart right here. These pleats are actually a dart that we're just not sewing all the way up. Another way to use darts is to create seams. And I'm gonna show you, that's gonna make more sense if I can actually like move things around and show you. But that is what a dart is. It's a triangular shape that we can use to cup the body, because all of these patterns are flat, 2D, obviously they're hanging on my wall. I and you are not a 2D figure. We are 3D things roaming around in the world. We're 3D beings. So to make something flat fit around our body. Now there are darts in this top that I'm wearing, but they're harder to find. That's why I really want to start with the obvious so that you know what a dart is in the basic shape. And then once you really understand what a dart can do, it just unlocks so many cool things. So I want to share a couple of those things with you today. Of course, we can't dive into the whole wonders of all there is to learn about darts, but I do want to start to give you an idea so maybe you can start thinking about what is a dart, where is a dart, and maybe you want to learn more about said darts so that you can learn your own pattern making superpower. So let's go over to the table and I'll show you what I mean. This is a very basic bodice shape. This is half scale, and I want to show you the difference. This is a pattern where I have seam allowance and I have that extra fabric so that when I sew this dart together, I have something to sew to. So when you see a dart in a pattern like this, typically you put the two dart legs together and you stitch along that line so that fabric is caught in between. So you have something to sew to so that it can create the shape. But when we are making patterns, the seam allowance and the dart root, which is what this fabric inside the dart is called, gets in the way if we want to start moving things around and making different designs out of this. So we often use what's called a sloper or a block, a template, something that doesn't have the seam allowance or this extra root in here, so that we can move things around. But I want to use this sloper template as an example to show you really how this works. But if you're looking at a commercial pattern that you bought somewhere, likely it'll look more like this, where you have seam allowance included and your dart is going to look more like this with fabric in between. If I were to try to sew this up, I would have nothing to grab to. So this is definitely not a finished pattern. It's something that I'm using to create a different pattern, but it'll be easier to show you what I'm doing. So what do I mean by the dart creates a cup of the body? So here's Miss Susie. This is actually her pattern. If I were to close this dart like I was just showing you and sew the dart together, it could then hug her body. See how it's now hugging her body? Whereas before I close the dart, it's not hugging her body. So in order to hug her body, we have to sew the dart closed. We have to close the dart, right? But here's where the dart gets to be super cool, is that you can move this dart. This is the first principle of dart manipulation. It's the first principle of pattern making. You can move that dart anywhere along the perimeter of the pattern. So if I wanted to move it here and decide that I want my dart to go in the neck instead for a design decision, like I just thought it would look cool if I put my dart up there. The cool thing is that no matter where you put it, if you're working with a pattern or a template, a sloper that already fits the person you're trying to do, if you just move the dart, it changes the design so that now your dart is up in the neck, but it still fits the same. So that's why understanding what the dart can do is so incredibly powerful, because now you have the option of putting that dart wherever you want, but it's still going to hug the body. So you can get really creative with how to move that dart around and how to do different things. Here's another version of that sloper that I was telling you about. So here's a front bodice sloper. It's actually what this original pattern was cut from. And you can see this is, a version of it. I've got seam allowance and I've got the dart root in there. So these are my slopers for Miss Susie. Now, if you line them up, you might see, I've got a dart in the back. I've got a little dart right here in the side seam. So there's even a dart that goes into the side seam to create that shaping to hug in the body. So they're really kind of in more than just in the triangle that you take out in the pattern. So there's another thing. So that's how we see a dart in a seam, right? Here's another way to see a dart in a seam. So going back to our moving darts around example here is let's open this back up. So let's say I didn't want to put the whole dart into the neck. Maybe I just want to put half of the dart. So now I have 2 darts and I can choose to leave it. Like, that's pretty cool. I have a dart in the neck and now I have a dart down here, like some of those examples I showed you on my wall. Or you can put it, say, into the shoulder seam. So let's say I want to put it into the shoulder seam and now I have 2 darts again, but I have a dart up in the shoulder and I have a dart down in the waist. Let's say I wanted to turn this into a princess seam. I can then separate my front. Now this is my front bodice and this is my side front bodice. And I would round this out and you would, since this pattern doesn't have seam allowance on it anyway, I would add seam allowance along here. This now becomes a seam. And, of course I have seams everywhere else too. But now when I sew this together, it's going to cup and give me the shape that will fit Miss Susie. But my darts are actually in a seam and I would have to add seam allowance so I could sew that together. So that is just the very beginning, my friends. Those are just a couple of examples, a couple of quick examples of how you can, just by knowing what the dart can do, change a design from a very basic shape, a basic bodice, into a princess bodice, just by moving darts and splitting it and adding seam allowance. So that's why I get so excited. This is nothing. This is like the very, 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 very beginning. But I hope you enjoyed and it's starting to come together. So are you starting to see how cool they are? If you've taken classes from me, you've probably seen that before. It's something that I start with because we have to start, in my opinion, this is how I like to start. If you start by learning the very basics of what a dart can do, everything can be related back to that. Even the most craziest designs, even like my low back little bow, it's just a series of what darts can do. How to do fitting adjustments, like what you're looking for when you're doing a fitting, really relates back to how does a dart work? Am I adding a dart? Am I taking away? I get really excited about it because I don't know, I just think it's really, really cool. And if you're liking this, if you're starting to go, oh, I get it, and you want to learn more, because there's so much more, then I hope you will join me in some of my other videos here on YouTube. We actually have a very fun event coming up very soon called Fitabulous Fit Bootcamp, where I show you exactly what I mean about using this dart and this dart knowledge for how to make fitting adjustments. Because let's face it, everyone is curious about fitting. Am I right? We should have the sign up down below in the description. If it's already gone by and you've missed it, the best thing to do is to get on my news list because we're always doing fun classes for free so you can try it out, so you can learn if my method is for you. We always have something going on. I hope you'll join us for Fitabulous Fit Bootcamp. It is always a blast, always tons of fun. Learn a lot about fitting, the power of the dart. We have that coming up very soon. And of course, here on my channel, I share all about all of my favorite things in pattern making, and you better believe the dart is part of that. That's all we have for you today, all about that dart. Let me know in the comments, would you buy a t-shirt? Because we're really thinking about making t-shirts because I think it just needs to be a thing. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.